Okay. It's 5:30, so I'll call this meeting to order of the Historic District Commission. We'll start with roll call, please. Corey Parks, Chair. And Commissioners, oh, sorry, Tara, go ahead. It seems like the setting may have been changed to where now you have to press the center button to turn on your microphone. So I would just say before y'all speak, please make sure that your microphone's on. And so I know that there was an error on our minutes, but I would entertain a motion to accept the amended minutes.
Make a motion to accept the amended minutes.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll move to item I for the renovation and new construction at 931 Faulkner Street. Tara?
Thank you. The zoning is C1, Central Business District at 931 Faulkner Street. The house was built in 1935. It is a plain traditional craftsman colonial revival structure, and it is contributing to the Robinson Historic District. North of the structure is restricted office district. East is Central Business District. South is Central Business. West is R2A, two-family residential district. And also to the east is the Old Conway Design Overlay District, whereas it is surrounded on all other sides by the Robinson Historic District. To the north is a craftsman contributing structure. To the east is again Old Conway. To the south is a plain traditional colonial revival contributing structure. To the west is a colonial revival contributing structure, and also to the west is colonial revival individually listed structure. The applicant is proposing a multifamily residential project, and the applicant is proposing to rehabilitate the existing contributing structure and construct a new multifamily dwelling. The property was rezoned from O3 to C1 on January 14th, 2025. The C1 district allows up to 24 dwelling units per acre. The 0.63 acre site may accommodate up to 15 units. Some just brief background is it was rezoned from O3 to C1. It went to Planning Commission in August of 2023. The Planning Commission makes recommendations to City Council. It passed at Planning Commission. It went to City Council in September of 2020, September 12th, 2023. It was tabled, and then it was brought back on January 14th to City Council, where it passed. On the 2020 survey document, 931 Faulkner, that is the existing structure at the site, is referred to as an apartment building at 931 Faulkner Street, with historic use being noted as 6 units. Some of the notes on the property were threats to property, neglect, deterioration. The original wall material is weatherboard. The window types are double hung and stationary, and its level of significance is significant within a group context. As stated, the building is plain traditional craftsman colonial revival, and the proposed structure is plain traditional colonial revival. Regarding the neighborhood and public rights-of-ways and alleys, the applicant has proposed a curb cut to accommodate a parking lot. There are no other existing streetscape elements that will be impacted by the project. For features and plantings, there is an existing sidewalk along Faulkner Street that will need to be repaired. The applicant has indicated that 13 significant trees will remain and 7 will be removed. 5 trees along the street frontage are required. Regarding lot coverage, the property is zone C1, which allows for 100% lot coverage, and the regulations state 80 to 100%. It's in 2 different sections, but one says 80% for urban, and then the other says 80 to 100%. There's a little contradiction in there. Based upon the site plan, the applicant has not indicated occupying more than 80% of the lot. For walkways, drives, and parkings, The location of the parking area will necessitate the removal of 6 significant trees. The parking lot is on the north side of the property. A parking lot at the rear would disturb the buffer between the dwellings and adjacent property, so that's on the western side. That's adjacent to the residential area, including the removal of trees at the rear of the property. The rear setback between the existing dwelling and the rear property line is approximately 30 feet, which would be insufficient for a parking area as well as disturbing that buffer. Changes to the building exterior. Regulations state retain and preserve masonry features that contribute to the overall historic character of a building and site. The applicant has stated that they will clean and tuck point the existing brick around the foundation area. For wooden buildings, retain and preserve wooden features that contribute to the overall historic character of a building and site. The original material is weatherboard. It has deteriorated. The applicant is proposing new, forgive me as I try to pronounce this, cementitious siding of the same lap width. Windows and doors, retain and preserve windows that contribute to the overall historic character. The applicant has stated that they have consulted with a historic preservation, architectural specialist, and I'll let the applicant go into more details about their replacement rather than their repair. All doors will be repaired and repainted. The shutters appear decorative and not functional and may not be original. And again, I'll let the applicant speak to that as they have provided additional comment, which I have provided to the commission regarding those shutters and their existence at the time of the house being listed as contributing. Regarding the new construction, this new construction will be to the south of the existing contributing structure. This would be the Faulkner facing side if you were to be going south down Faulkner. The applicant is proposing a modular brick siding, brick-clad columns, and brick row-lock sills. For size, shape, and scale, the regulations state that new construction shall maintain the existing pattern of surrounding historic buildings along the street, orient the main entrances of the building at the front in a manner similar to established patterns in the district. The proposed height is 38 feet 6 inches to ridge soffit. The height of adjacent multifamily structures are 29 feet 1 inch and 30 feet 1 inch. The proposed structure is 8 feet taller than the existing structure. The proposed structure is 3 stories and adjacent to multifamily dwelling and is adjacent to multifamily dwellings, which are 2 stories. Adjacent properties to the north and west are residential in design and scale. The proposed dwelling will be oriented towards a shared courtyard on 931 Faulkner, and it'll be aligned in regards to setback with the existing structure. The front elevation may benefit from additional details that would help it visually align on Faulkner. And more details could be considered on other elevations. For windows, the applicant is proposing 6/6 windows with fiber cement trim, which appears comparable to the trim width of adjacent structures of a similar style. And for consideration is dormers may be considered for attic windows. It conforms to setbacks and then lot coverage 80 to 100% in commercial zones. And here are potential conditions. Applicant must obtain all applicable building permits when a certificate of appropriateness is granted. HVAC units and other utility equipment shall be screened from the public right-of-way through their positioning in relation to other structures, architectural screening, or through vegetative cover. Driveway and parking shall be composed of bricks, stone pavers, or concrete. Asphalt is not permitted. Masonry shall be cleaned with the gentlest means. Water blasting is not permitted. The brick shall not be painted. Prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall provide planning staff with verification that the National Park Service has approved the window replacements and the siding replacement on the existing structure. If shutters are to remain, they shall be replaced with a functional equivalent size to fit the window openings. Prior to issuance of a certificate of appropriateness, applicant shall provide planning staff with elevations that mitigate the new construction's orientation discrepancy on the Faulkner Street's facade, additional architectural details on the southern facade, courtyard entrance details, fencing type vegetation, etc. Roofing shall be asphalt or composition type shingles. Siding on the new construction shall be composed of brick and wood or wood-like materials such as hardy or smart side siding. A minimum of 5 trees from the approved species list must be planted along Faulkner Street outside of the right-of-way. The existing sidewalk shall be repaired to meet ADA standards. Lighting shall be inward, downward, and shrouded to stay within the bounds of the property. The applicant shall coordinate with the Department of Transportation for a driveway permit. The project shall undergo site development review prior to building permit issuance. The property shall be replatted prior to or concurrently with site development review. There shall be 5 trees along the Faulkner Street frontage, and the existing driveway shall be removed. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Tara. So just some housekeeping before we open it up for public comment and have the applicant speak to the proposed project. So the structure will be, we will allow the applicant to have 10 minutes to speak to the project, and then following that, we will allow for 3 minutes for folks speaking, additional folks speaking on for the project, but then anyone speaking against the project as well. And so with that, Brent, if you could make your way to speak to the project. If you'll just share your name and address for us, please.
My name is Brent Salter, 201 Lee Andrew Lane. Kind of echoey.
A little bit.
So I understand it's one agenda item. The way that I view this is two separate projects. So 931 Faulkner, which is the existing building, it is a contributing structure. And so Bob Kempkis, this will be our fifth project that we've done with him on the historic preservation side. He is an expert, to say the least. He is the chairman of the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. He has been doing this for years and years and years. He has the relationship with the National Park Services and the preservation people that say whether or not something is adequate. He's a very smart man, has been doing this for a very long time, which is why we got him on our team. So a lot of the rehabilitation of that existing structure, he's already had his eyes on it, and he has given us recommendations, which you've seen what we've proposed regarding the changing of the windows and to what, and the replacement of the siding, why, and also to what. So there are details that must stay in order to meet the criteria of the National Park Services. So that is our goal, is to to do a historic preservation of that 931 Faulkner building, the existing one. So the requirements to check the boxes for the National Park Services are more stringent than we have here by lot. So I would think if we can get their okay, then everything should be just fine. So if that is existing building. New building that we are proposing is one of the requirements of National Park Services is when you develop something new, you must not try to make it look like the old. It needs to have a differing identity. And so if you consider the 2-story red brick building towards Caldwell and some other structures that are in the historic district, that's why we have chosen the style of building that we have chosen, so that it differentiates from existing preservation, all while fitting into the neighborhood. Rob Sharp is the architect on this. He is in Northwest Arkansas. He has been doing this for decades, weaving new construction into historic neighborhoods. He is an expert in this field, and I think this will be the fifth project that we've done with him also. So he is extremely seasoned as it comes to this type of thing and ensuring that what gets done and is proposed is appropriate for the neighborhood. And it's his name, and it is also his business, and his it's his reputation that's on the line also here. So not only is this coming from me, this is coming from a man who feels like this is appropriate. for downtown Conway. And so it feels like, to hit it head on, the biggest contention here is going to be whether or not 3 stories is appropriate for the streetscape. And I think if you can go, did you guys get the most recent adjacent photos email? I think the photo from Caldwell, if you go back to the one from Caldwell, that to me gives the best perspective on what we're talking about. I mean, the building at Faulkner and Caldwell definitely reads, I've never been in that, but it either is 3 stories or it reads 3 stories. The 2-story red brick building with the dormers, it reads 3 stories. There's a number of structures in the historic district that read 3 stories. We have no problem, just like towards Prince Street, we have a 2-story next to a 1-story, and that is extremely prevalent. So to put a 3-story structure in between 2 2-story structures, it will give some appropriate variation in height to the streetscape, in our opinion, and feels appropriate. With the C1 zoning, there's no off-street parking required, but instead of telling all the residents that they need to park on the street, and that's why we're proposing to build the parking lot to service the apartments. Not something we have to do, but something that we feel like is the right thing to do, and it will be appropriately screened. So I know Dan West, who I've gotten to know over the years, I feel like he and I have a really good, honest relationship, and he's voiced his concerns. I would like to point out that the new proposed structure is over 50 feet from the property line. So, there's a lot of structures in this neighborhood that are much closer than 50 feet to its adjoining property. So there's plenty of buffer there. Any additional buffer can be handled with landscaping. There is a collection of trees that are going to remain, and if we need to add additional landscaping, then we can do that. But we feel like that what we are proposing is appropriate for the neighborhood, appropriate for the site. It also gives an opportunity for a cool little courtyard and doing it the way that we've done it. So I think if we are allowed to build this when we get done, it'll be a great addition to Faulkner Street and to the neighborhood and to the city of Conway as a whole. So.
So while you're at the podium, if you could just confirm that you've reviewed and understand the proposed conditions.
Yes. And so Tara and I have communicated on some of the proposed conditions. And so number 5, regarding the siding replacement on the existing structure and the window replacement. So did everyone, I know Bob Kempkus gave the reasoning in his letter for having to replace the siding. He feels like it is appropriate. There's also a construction envelope, technical structural sheathing thing, which I brought Nathan if we need to get into the technical aspects of it. But this is the first time that we've actually replaced windows in a historic preservation project. We've always been able to figure out some way to save these. These are too deteriorated. There is a dialogue that happens between Bob and the National Park Services. So if number 5 is going to have to remain, I would ask that it be tied to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, not the building permit. So at the end of the day, you're going to get the same thing. It's me taking the risk, but I'll have a comfort level based on Bob's conversations and what there's a long lead time on windows typically. And by the time Bob gets it submitted to the National Park Services, that could be a couple months before you get their formal approval. So to me, if that condition, if what I sent doesn't give a comfort level for that condition to be removed, and that condition must stay. My ask would be that it get tied to the certificate of occupancy and not the building permit issuance.
And just to clarify for folks in the audience and anyone who's maybe watching, that's based off of construction timeline, right? Where you're not having to wait to get the National Park Service approval and then have to submit that to then be able to get the building permit.
Correct.
Okay.
So we would, you tell them what you were going to do, and then they approve it, and then at the end of the day, you do the part 3, which shows them you did what you said before they formally approve your project altogether. And then windows these days, who knows on lead times. So you take both of those factors, and it could be quite a bit of time if we said we got to wait to even get the building permit.
Other comments on the conditions?
The other one is 6. And so on 6 regarding the shutters, you can see in what I believe was forwarded to you guys that Bob said those need to stay as proposed. Well,
And
as they are today.
Yes. So for anyone that didn't receive the comments, basically it spoke to the fact that it does not appear that those were functional shutters at the time. And so doing so would basically be changing more than you would need to change for this to be in line with what it was in its previous state.
I asked the question specifically to him because to me, those don't really look original. Can we just get rid of them altogether? And he said, absolutely not. Those have been there long enough that they're considered a design feature of the home. And when the historic district was approved, those were there. So those are going to be taken down, repaired, and replaced as is.
Other comments on the conditions?
Yeah, I think so. In Rob's letter that he wrote, Tara, does that address some of these other concerns as it relates to prior to the issuance of certificate of appropriateness, applicant shall provide planning staff with? I'm happy to do that, but I know he added some color to those specifics as well.
Given that it did because the letter states that it would be aluminum clad but wooden finish, right, windows. However, since it is a total replacement of all windows as well as the siding, going forward, it's better to have that extra fail-safe of the National Park Service. However, it being prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, they wouldn't be able to have anyone move in without that verification, right? So for number 5, I think it would be, as planning staff, I would say that keeping the condition with the National Park Service, like I said, holds that fail-safe, but changing it to CO, I think still protects the integrity.
Yeah.
And then the shutters, that's something that I think makes sense. If there's this additional level of verification that those are actually an element of the contributing structure, then it would make sense to strike that.
And then, Brent, did you have, sorry?
But yeah, Tara, I was speaking about number 7.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's something that I think be better for the commission to discuss.
Okay. Yeah, whenever we saw this, you should have a letter that came from Rob describing some of his qualifications and addressing some of those points as well.
Tara, for you, so this was one note that I had come into the meeting. So 10 and 16 seem repetitive because on 10 you have a minimum of 5 trees, but then on 16 you have there shall be 5 trees.
Those are repetitive.
Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't know. Okay. So we could potentially combine those or modify in some way.
No, I would say strike combine them so that
Okay.
it says that we want to specify from the approved species list.
Yep.
But there shall be 5 trees allows for there to be the retention of any existing trees rather than if there's some, having to plant an additional 5. I think that's a lot clearer. But there shall be 5 trees along the Faulkner Street frontage. Any planted trees shall be from the approved species list.
Okay.
You're not going to have to twist my arm to get me to put trees in there. It'll be just fine.
Other comments on this before we open it up to other folks, Brent?
I don't think so, unless there's something that you guys know that I missed or feel like I missed.
Questions for the applicant while we have him here? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on behalf of this? Okay. Anyone to speak against? And just a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes. Oh, that's right, sorry. Correction, the first speaker will have 10, and then following that, there will be 3 minutes.
Okay, I don't think I'll take 10.
If you can just share your name and address, please.
Dan West, 920 Center Street. I live in the house directly to the west of the new structure, proposed new structure. First, I would like to say we're tickled to death that he is going to work on that existing house. I'd be hard pressed to make that look any worse. So I'm comfortable that that's going to be a major improvement. He did say that I was over 50 feet from the proposed new structure, and I am. I'm 51 and some inches away from the new structure. I went to the building at the corner of Faulkner and Caldwell that he showed the picture of, the 3-story in the turret, and took a tape measure and measured back 51 feet from that, and it was pretty much like that. So you can see it both ways, but it's still going to be a big old tall building, and fairly close. There are some trees there now that are pretty hideous. They frequently fall on my garage and fence, and there's one that's been on my fence for the last 9 or 10 months that I've communicated with his office about several times in the last 9 months. But anyway, I would just soon those go away and be replaced with something that's, other than hackberry, that's going to continue to break and fall. But anyway, the structure, the design, we went around and talked to most of the neighbors, and everybody was kind of okay with that. But the height was what most people were concerned about. And as I said in my letter, if you do go ahead and approve it for 3 stories, I sure would ask that you remove the windows on the west end, which is kind of ironic since when my wife was on the commission, that was her pet peeve, that there are not enough windows. But in this case, it's not like we run around naked in our backyard or anything, but it really, it's hard to imagine, how good of a view they would have from the 3rd floor of a building. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say in my letter. I think kind of summed up everything. Do y'all have any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else to speak against this? And just as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes. And if you could just state your name and address, please.
My name is Keith Woosley. I live at 4330 Harvard Avenue. I'm here because my son, who owns the property just to the north of the proposed construction, is out of the country on business. This is his daughter, Harper, who lives in that house. I've never been before the commission before. I don't know if I'm allowed to discuss the parking, the noise, the lights from the cars going in and out. Am I allowed to discuss that?
That's more site development review, right?
The noise is something that would be, it would need to meet code, Mooney code. When you're discussing the lights from the parking area, the commission does have the authority to, stipulate that there will be landscaping around the parking area. That is something that we also cover in site development review, which is an internal process that we do for commercial multifamily buildings. But we could also bring that up here. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I think the density of what he's proposing, eventually 15 units, and it appears that there are 17 parking spaces. There are going to be guests. There's already congestion on that street. Although you're saying that he would have to put bushes, shrubs, something that would help with the noise. People pulling in and out, it's going to be noisy. People that are visiting, they're going to have to park on the street. The lights will be shining in Harper's windows as they pull in and out of the parking places. It's just more than you would expect your neighbors to have that much density on a property when it's, I know it's not all residential area, but there will be some nuisances that Harper will have to put up with. You have anything, Harper?
I was just gonna ask, I don't see it anywhere in here, but do you know how close the parking lot will be to the fence that is around my yard?
Is it on that? I don't have that measurement on. No, but we can ask the applicant if they can speak to that after your time.
We do commend Mr. Salter for proposing to rehabilitate the older house because it certainly has been an eyesore since Harper has lived there. And we appreciate that, and we thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else to speak against? And just a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes, and if you can start with your name and address, please.
I'm Vivian Hogue at 1723 College Avenue. The historic district, the first one, the first large one, I was on the committee that formed that, and we had so many dreams of things that were going to happen, things that could be done with some of the areas, and we finally did get all of that taken care of. We did, of course, follow the National Register of Historic Places guidelines, and I noticed in a phrase in here that says harmony and aesthetically and functionally effective in this building. That's a bit subjective in regard to the two structures, so I'm not sure what that means to the plan. I know everyone has seen the thousands and thousands of rentals come up on all sides of Conway, most being convenient for college students and the locals who work in Little Rock. So I have to question who are the target clientele who make your rentals so much needed. Part of my wondering is that all the colleges had dormitories when I was in college, and we lived in them. In the regard to issue of renting and who will likely be the renters, I want to know who the landlord will be and who will be the contact person for issues that might arise. And if I may ask what the rental costs could be, because that sometimes makes a difference. I think the courtyard for social engagement might be nice for renters, but possibly a problem for neighborhoods. They do not drink knee-high grape sodas at their gatherings, and they don't resist firing off fireworks on holidays. Multiple people mean more parking, of course, as we have agreed on. If you live in Old Conway, you know what I mean. If not, you should rent an apartment on College, Davis, or Donaghy for a week. Will there be trash, parking in grassy areas, late night noise, not just lights, from traffic coming in and out? Will these apartments be pet friendly, where they can tie up their dogs to bark incessantly or let their cat go feral for the night? I bring these things up because Old Conway's quiet and respectful pleasures of the past are gone, which gets us back to aesthetics and functional harmony. You say it will be 3 stories, yet there will be the height added for an attic. The turret on the old funeral home, which was a home before it was, I'm a native, I'm pretty familiar with all these places.
So,
But am I out of
ma'am,
time?
yes, ma'am, that's all of your
Okay,
time.
that's okay.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Evening, Chris Smith, 1511 Prince Street. Let it be known, I am one who's been known to renovate downtown buildings and do things with them. I am a neighbor directly to the northwest of this location. I just can't imagine a three-story structure hulking on the other side of my fence. Not that I have a whole lot of privacy in my neighborhood. That is something that I do want to hold on to. I just can't imagine the amount of activity, loss of privacy, noise. My dog's already bark at everything else. I just don't think it's the right move. Rehabilitation of a building such as this is a great thing, just not this structure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Rollins, 615 Watkins Street, and I have a couple of points to make. About the height is number one. 915 is not a three-story building. It's 2 stories with an attic. It's not a three-story building. The building at the corner of Faulkner and Caldwell is not in the historic district. Not in the district. And according to Steve Hurd, there are no 3-story structures in the historic district. There's houses that have basements plus 2 stories, but that's not considered a 3-story house. So at this moment, there are no 3-story structures in the historic district. I would like for it to remain that way. Traffic. It's a problem. People park on both sides of the street. People enter that block of Faulkner from Caldwell and Prince, creating virtually a block at times, particularly during Toadsuck, which is coming up. I invite you all to try to drive down Faulkner Street during Toadsuck. I have seen fire trucks pull in there to try to get through, change their mind, back up, go another way. And with regards to the lady talking about, what did she say? Harmony aesthetically and functionally, that's very subjective. There's no way to measure that. And I can tell you that the look of that lot with the new addition and the old structure, even at its finest condition, is not aesthetically attractive. It is not. Also, the other phrases that he uses in his proposal, like vernacular appropriate for the district, do you know what that means? I mean, maybe someone can explain. I don't know what that means. I don't know how we talk about a proposal if we don't understand the language. And the other thing about the appropriate scaling for the streetscape is that's not anything that's measured. That's just an opinion. I urge you to vote no. Thank you. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Garrett Ferry, 1703 Prince Street. Pardon my appearance. I've been working in my yard all day trying to make our property look really nice.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Garrett Ferry, 1703 Prince Street.
Thank you.
My wife's family has lived in Conway for 7 generations in the same house. We've remained there because it's important to them, and the historic district we thought would be preserved. I don't know if there was violations of the Sunshine Law when this was rezoned, But this was one property in the historic district that was rezoned. One property. How is that possible? Was there proper notice to the community that this was going to be rezoned? Did you adhere to the sunshine laws of the public hearing? Because I didn't hear anything about it. I didn't see any signs on that property that there was a public hearing about it being rezoned. That's point one. Point two, how many other three-story buildings are there multi-density within the historic district? This isn't okay. The problems that come from a high-density unit, especially when we don't know what the target market, like somebody else spoke about, was, is this going to be Section 8 housing? Have any of you been informed of that? Has the public been informed of that? I'm not against Section 8 housing, but we should know. We should know who our neighbors are going to be. And to give them permission to build something that is outside of the parameters of the historic district, even though they're rezoned, I don't think is okay. I'm going to look into every action of this rezoning. I'm Arkansas Transparency and 5-0 Media. And I'm not going to let this go. I've held the city to task. I've held the police department to task. And I'm about to hold the Historic Commission to task. Because something, I don't know if he paid you money to approve
Okay, sir,
this, but-
you have 20 seconds, but I would say that we're teetering on inappropriate comments.
Well, it's freedom of speech. I don't know if he paid any of you money.
No. So just to clarify, and I wanted to respect the rest of your time, and so I'll give you 10 seconds, but just for the folks in the audience and the folks that are watching, we are volunteers serving in this capacity. We have not been paid by anyone for any project that is before us. And then regarding the purpose of tonight's meeting, it is not regarding the rezoning. We're just deciding if within the zoning that exists, if this is appropriate for the neighborhood. The rezoning does not come to this body. Rezoning goes to the Planning Commission and the City Council. And
Perfect.
so with that comment, I would yield you your, I think, was it 12 seconds? Your 12 seconds that you had remaining for any additional remarks.
I just urge you not to approve a 3-story building multi-density in the historic district. Because if you do, I'm going to try to put a Red Lobster in my backyard.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Emily Walter. My address is 940 Center Street, and I, like you, have served on the commission for 6 years. When this came to the Planning Commission in September 2023, I was vice chair of the Historic District Commission and got up and spoke against it, and was also questioned and referred to with the city at that meeting. Margaret West was also on the commission, and I spoke on behalf of the Historic District Commission that night at the Planning Commission, and then it went in front of City Council and it was tabled. To me, tabled means that you have a month to come back, and he was told that he would have until October 31st to come back. I think they gave him 3 months. Margaret was on the commission at the time. I was on the commission at the time. Margaret rolled off in 2024. It never came back in front of City Council. We checked it constantly. And then the first month after Margaret and I were both rolled off of HDC, it came in front of City Council. So 15 months later, and the public was not aware of that. I know this doesn't have to do with HDC, but there is a lot of history behind that. Because there were 2 HDC committee members who were speaking out against it that night, very publicly against it. With that said, we did not have public notice that it was going in front of City Council, so we looked at it for 12 months. But Mr. Salters tried to do a high-density apartment complex on Robinson a few years ago, and he was also denied. In June of 2019, whenever I served on the council, there was somebody named Gail Fox who tried to put a large multifamily home at 1415 French Street. It was new construction. It got denied because of the scale of it, because the eaves, the height of the eaves were 18 feet. And I've looked that up and brought that as well as proof that I'll let y'all see. But that was brought in front of us twice with 2 different redesigns, and both times it got denied because it does not fit the scale. I was part of the Ernst & Young study that the Conway Chamber did. I know as a real estate agent that we are short on housing. I'm not here to deny that, but this is not the place to solve that problem. Multiple, like high density units in a very small lot is not the place to solve it. And I brought my handy dandy rule book from my HDC days. And what I do want to quote is on page 9 of our rule book, under determination of an application, when evaluating the general compatibility or alterations to the exterior of any building in the HDC, we shall consider but not limit to the following factors of the building's area influence within the context of the Secretary of Interior Standards of Rehab, and that is siding, height, proportion, rhythm, roof area, entrance area, wall areas, detailing, facade, scale, and massing. Letter E, new construction shall be judged on its compatibility for the existing neighborhood of influence. And although there are one large apartment complex that only has 4 units next door,
That's all your time, Emily.
that's all that's there. Everything else is smaller. Thank you for your time.
I'm Bob Cantrell. I live in Greenbrier, but I own the building at 930 Faulkner Street, directly across the street. One thing, I know this doesn't apply to this, but I'm really disappointed that I wasn't notified about the rezoning in January, and it makes me automatically suspect the worst when the city does things like this. My biggest problem with this is I remember when the existing building was occupied and the traffic that went along with it. There's, as mentioned previously, there is already a traffic problem with that street, primarily due to the beauty shop that's on the east side, which if there's any other traffic at all, it relegates that street to one lane. And that's not uncommon of that street if you'll drive up and down there occasionally. Also, right now, that is still a residential atmosphere there. And when you have that high concentration of people coming in, that is going to go away and that will never come back. And when you have high concentrations like this is being proposed, it tends to deteriorate over time. And I fear that will be what happened. And we don't need that close to the historic district, I feel like. I don't have any problem with the renovation of the existing building. It obviously needs that. But I just hate to see the situation. I would never, that old house that I have across the street, I would never do anything there to be detrimental to the historical district across the street. So, and I just hate to see this happen. At best, I'd like to see it relegated to a smaller occupancy level. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak against?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Roberts. I'm at 934 Center Street. And yes, we all agree that the house needs to be updated and redone. Excuse me. Because it is deteriorating. I'm on the north end, and I agree with so I'm back behind. I'm not where Margaret and Dan are, but I'm behind those trees, and that would be my backyard. And so it's the density of the parking lot. There would be just cars, I agree, just coming in and out. And even though it looks like there's a lot of trees there, there's really not. And I can see all the way through to the street. So it's just a high density issue. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Margaret West. I live at 920 Center Street, and I've been in your shoes, so thank you for serving. I'd like to just kind of follow up on a few of the points made. The apartment house to the left, to the south of this, said is 3 stories. If you look at it, it's 2 stories plus an attic with dormers. And then as far as the house on the corner of Faulkner and Caldwell, that turret has 3 stories. But if you go over to that building, the rest of the things that look like windows on this picture and the rest of that building, the 3rd stories, those are not windows. Those are vents, attic vents. They're horizontal. Okay, to the right. Okay, yeah, go right up. The peak on the right, those are attic vents. And on the side and the back, it's the same thing. So that's not truly a 3rd story. Just the turret is the 3rd story, which is really kind of a more of an architectural feature than anything. I think the most appropriate look for this new building would be the look of a carriage house, because that is something that you would expect to see in Old Conway. As far as the January City Council meeting, like has been said, none of us knew it was coming up. No notice went out. Nobody was there to speak against it, and there was much conversation about that in the meeting. Believe it was Councilman Hawkins acknowledging that, asked Brent, well, Brent, what do you want to do? Do you want us to go ahead and hear it tonight, or do you want to wait a couple of weeks and let the neighbors know? And he said, I want to do it tonight. So here we are.
Anyone else to speak against? So seeing none, we'll bring it back into the commission. Couple of things that I just want to acknowledge. One, proper notice was given for this body, and so that's the only thing that we can speak to. I watched the council meeting, understand that they acknowledged that that was something that within their processes has to be addressed moving forward, but as it relates to the issue that we're discussing tonight, proper notice was given, and so just want to make sure that it's clearly communicated to everyone. But then also, before we discuss, I just want to remind you all that things that we should not keep in mind are the socioeconomic status of potential tenants, how many vehicles may be coming in and out, when they might be there. What we're needing to discuss is if it is appropriate, if the proposed project is appropriate given the surrounding uses, and not if the rezoning should have been approved, not if, and the timing related to that, not if it's going to be at this rate of rent versus this rate. That's not what we're deciding on. And so with that, would like to open it up for discussion. As they're gathering their thoughts, I do want to commend the folks that are here for this, on both sides of this important decision within the downtown neighborhood.
How would I amend, I want to amend the recommendation of the council to not approve the 3rd story as it, is it approved? Is it in
Yeah,
the
so no,
record?
that's not within our peer review. Basically, what we have before us is a commercial district that's been approved within the area that allows for multifamily density. That's not where we're,
So we can't. So we cannot discuss the height of the building? I think we can.
oh, I thought you were talking about the rezone.
No,
Sorry.
no, gosh, no. I don't want
Well,
to
when you
touch
said
that.
amending, I thought when you said amending what the council did, I'm like, no, that's
No,
not.
the recommendations of the commission, to change the wording to amend the height of the 2nd building, because it does not conform to the harmony and aesthetics of the district. What is that? Not one of the conditions? So I need to add
It's
a
allowed by
condition?
right within the zoning.
I'm sorry.
The density, the density is allowed by right, but the height is something that
Yes.
the HDC,
Yes.
so the way in which the distribution of that density is on site is something that is under the purview of HDC, and how that would be amended.
For me, the 3rd story is a huge problem because there are no 3-story buildings. I've driven all around downtown the turret is it, and it's clearly an architectural detail.
There's no full three-story buildings.
Yeah, there are no full three-story buildings, so it doesn't
But there are buildings
conform.
with three-story elements to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't conform to the historic district downtown. So I'm just asking process here. So when I make this motion, can I amend
I would
we have
say,
to have a motion on the floor for me to amend the motion?
yeah, I would ask that before you make that motion, maybe we discuss it a little bit more and understand kind of generally where everyone's
Oh,
at.
okay, sure. Okay, here's where I'm at. I don't like the third story. It just doesn't conform to the rest of the downtown historic district. It's pretty basic. For me, that's easy to see.
I think, and this is not my area of expertise, but I do think it's interesting when you look at the additional information that was shared with us. While I see the 3-story and the fact that that's been pointed out by the folks that spoke this evening, while there may not be 3-story, there is the fact that there's 3-story elements, but then also thinking about the overall height. Like that's where, because I don't remember which attachment it is, but I think we're talking about a 6-foot height difference between neighboring properties versus the one that's been proposed. So I don't think it's fair to say, well, there's no other 3 stories, so it should be more about, just my perspective, I think it should be more about the overall height and how that compares to the district versus the number of stories.
Well, that's what I meant when I said the stories. It's 6 feet. That's still a lot when you're looking at the roofscape of the neighborhood. I mean, for example, as someone who owns a home in the historic district, I would not want a house that tall sitting next to me looking over my historic home. It'd be different if it'd been there for 100 years, but it hasn't. It doesn't conform to the norms within the district. I mean, I know that's highly subjective, but 6 feet is not a small amount. It's a whole person.
And those heights were measured to the highest point. Is that right? 'Cause that
Yes.
we had,
I'm trying to find the
Yeah.
attachment.
I will say so as an architect, we're bound to measure allowable heights in building areas for buildings for the International Building Code all the time, fire codes and all kinds of things. And typically, it's not measured to the bridge soffit, it's measured to the middle of the sloping roof, right? Because you can't take again, this is just
this
industry
matters.
standard.
Yeah.
So you don't take, when we're calculating building heights, we don't take it to the center point of the ridge, we take it to the middle of the roof. So that way it takes into account like roof slopes and things,
Mhm.
I don't pose it as an addition to the neighborhood architecturally, because I think that the richness and the diversity of building form, while it may be aggressive right now, I think over time and the longevity of the neighborhood, I think it will add to the richness of the neighborhood. Now, if it is the exact same building that I would design, architect, I can't speak for that necessarily, but I do want to commend Mr. Salter for pursuing and engaging in professional services with an architect who specializes in historic preservation and historic structures and how to integrate new structures into existing neighborhoods. So I do want to commend that. It's not that he just hired somebody off the street or even our firm who doesn't do this day in and day out. He did seek out professionals that were cognizantly aware of the intricacies of this particular site. So I do want to appreciate and make sure that that is shared amongst the commissioners. In addition to, he's also seeking approval through the national parks for all the credits. And again, that is, like, as he mentioned, that's more stringent than anything that we're going to approve here tonight. So in the same regard, the folks that showed up tonight cannot go unheard also. So I also, again, want to commend everyone who showed up tonight to say that you're speaking for your neighborhood and you're standing up for your area and your investment in downtown Conway. So I don't know. I feel like we have a reasonable amount of consideration to pay to both parties here. My stance now, as we enter into discussions, is that it doesn't offend me professionally as an architect to see an additional story on a neighborhood of this nature? Is it, I mean, could it be, Tara, he's applying for as many units as possible on this site, right?
Yes.
So the max of 16 units per
The maximum on the site would be 15.
15, and how many do we, I'm sorry, don't.
He's proposing 9 units in the proposed structures, and there's an existing 5 to 6 in the existing structure. Okay. Did I do my math right? No, I didn't.
Okay, so, no, I didn't
we're
do the
letting
math
it
right. I was
slide.
thinking 16, but you're saying 9 plus 6 is 15.
15.
Therefore, he is
Yeah.
mathing correctly. I am not.
Okay.
No, that's fair. I appreciate that. And so I understand that as a developer, he has to make all the numbers crunch and all the things correct. And I do appreciate Dan West's, the letter that was shared to us about, while they don't support the third story, he was willing to come back and say, what if we did X and Y and Z to make sure that the project still can move forward? Because I don't know, Mr. Salter, if it's something that if you can't get the new building, then the rehabilitation of the existing structure might not be feasible financially. So then what happens?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think part of the timing issue, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think there is some utility question marks that went into part of this being as long and as drawn out as what it's been. So that's another part of the project penciling or not. Like, in some ways, that density allows for development that likely wouldn't happen otherwise.
Having worked on projects in this area on Faulkner Street down at Block South, that didn't go through because of financial hardships on things that happen. Not only through Planning Commission rezoning and then Historic District approval, there's also the site development review that could put a stop to all this. And the money could not work for site detention and parking lighting and to undercut and a million other reasons. Not to say that our decision here doesn't matter, because it does, because we are the next step in the line of things. But there's also another not easy process to go through in order to get all of this approved. I still feel like there's several hoops to jump through for the development.
Other comments, thoughts?
I'm not at all in favor of a third story. I think the height of the building needs to come down and conform to the other ones in that area.
Other comments?
I don't know. I'm still chewing on it a bit. I know we're still talking about it here. But I do think, the 6 feet, 8 feet, kind of whatever it is, I think it's a touch much. But also driving down in that area, I can't really imagine an additional 15 to 20 cars clogging up that road. It's just aesthetics if we're looking down the line here. I think it's also a bit much, but
Well, and I think it's, but to your point on parking, I think their willingness to dedicate a portion of their property for parking, even though they're not required to have off-street parking, should be part of the consideration. Because, there's a scenario where technically this could be developed and there not be off-street parking dedicated for the project, 17 spots or whatever the number that was mentioned. I think for me, and I'm trying to be as neutral as I can as the chair, but I think that while I do recognize the difference when you look at the number on the paper versus the number of numbers on the paper, when you look at what it is there currently versus what is there now, I drove it today, I drove it the day before, and just thinking about it, like, to me, I don't know that it would feel that different. As it relates to the height, I do recognize the concern from the neighboring properties, because that is going to be some additional footage that could be there. But I think that you could make in some ways a similar argument for a 2-story structure versus a 3-story. Anything above 1, when you have a property next to it, you're gonna feel a loss in privacy to some extent.
For me, it isn't even that. It's the sight line. It's the historic district. I know that sounds crazy because I'm usually not a stickler, but you just drive around. It would be significantly taller than the other buildings. And for me, although sometimes things are complex, and I do think there's a lot of gray area, this would be an exception to a rule. So that's what and we make exceptions all the time, but this would be a fairly obvious one. Like you could look across the street, you could see. It would match the turret at the end of the street, which is clearly a business, right? And clearly already in a business district. So for me, it's just it has really privacy fine. I wouldn't want it personally, but for me, that's not what I need to discuss. What I need to discuss is how does it harmonize with the historic elements of the district, because that's what we are doing here. And so that would just is my concern. Go ahead.
Is there a rule that, is there a height restriction for stories in the historic district? Like, are we breaking rules by allowing the third story?
It's a harmony.
It's just, which is subjective.
Yeah, and that's where it's, and that's where it's like,
That's not-
Jenny, to your point, I think harmony is important, but for me, and that's just why it's a struggle with it being subjective. I don't know, and maybe it would be different if it was standing there and I could see it. But driving and comparing it online and then looking what has been shared, I don't know that it throws the harmony off to the extent that it's like, the project doesn't make sense within the district. And so,
I've been on the other side of proposals like this from another firm in another city where we were strongly, advocating and making the case for a very modern, like white cube in a historic neighborhood. And that was not harmonious and it was not approved, nor should it have been. So, I mean, I feel like Mr. Salter's seeking out the professional help of people who are studied and trained in integrating these buildings into neighborhoods like this, I feel like is more, I don't know, I feel like that professional opinion and study of that process needs to be weighted as well. I mean, the harmony is subjective, right?
Yeah.
And it is everybody's opinion. And so vote accordingly. But I feel like there also needs to be consideration to say that they've engaged with professionals who do this day in and day out, not just our city, but others. They have deemed this is appropriate.
yeah. And they're in at least the way that we're looking at it, it's a single project, but it's really two projects, and there is going to be the additional scrutiny on, and I'm not an expert in this, but I would imagine that there's going to be some consideration about what this complete build out looks like as it relates to National Park Service. So I don't know.
I have another question for Tara. Hopefully it'll be more concrete. So if we deny it and the Salters decide to sell, we are still C1 because of the things that happened previously. And based on setbacks, like what happens, what is the next submission allowed to get away with based on what has happened before we were given this decision?
Thank you.
So in the C1 district, they are permitted 100% lot coverage, and there aren't setbacks. Now, in site development review, there are setbacks for residential. Setbacks between commercial and residential, so a little bit of a contradiction, but that is a protection that can be offered. There is no parking requirement in C1. And so when it comes to of course, any development would then need to come back before the HDC in order to be approved for the design. But those are just some of the basic parameters. There's no height restriction for C1.
And in terms of the existing structure, you're all grateful that he's trying to rehab it now. What happens if next owner decides that the juice isn't worth the squeeze to try to save that? Can they tear it down?
A demolition in the Robinson Historic District does need to go before the HDC, and they need to provide evidence as to why it cannot be saved, and that's like financial evidence, basically like it can't be sold, and then like the level of deterioration and neglect, why it cannot be rehabilitated. So that you would need to prove it. They cannot just go and get a demo permit in Robinson.
Well, and we've had a previous HGC has had this same property considered or proposed for demolition, but I don't know what year that was.
In terms of, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking more than normal, so I apologize. This is, I'm out of my comfort zone, but, item 7, I feel as a commissioner does require some additional information and revisions to the submission, that I think is important, including the elevations to mitigate the new construction's orientation discrepancy to Faulkner Street. I'm assuming that means that all the buildings, all the units are facing the courtyard to the north, but we want it to have a face on the street.
Yeah, so when could you go to the elevation, the Faulkner Street elevation? Yeah, a proposed one, sorry. It's the one where, like, so you see a little bit of this. No. Yes, that's the one. So this was just based upon my review, definitely up for discussion. That this looked like a side of a building when you look at the Faulkner Street and the one that they're rehabbing, and then the one that is to the south. My perception was that it was a disruption of orientation. So that's what I was alluding to, if there was any ways to modify that. And I know that Salter, it's been discussed, he has been working with an architect who deals with historic, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that from the support letter we got this afternoon.
And you're also asking for additional architectural details on the southern facade, which would be the facade on the left-hand side of this, right? Because
Yes.
this is facing west.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this is, if you're driving north down Faulkner, this is what you would see, that which is not obscured by the existing adjacent property.
And so, and then courtyard entrance details, because when I was looking through this, I kept wanting to see like the old and the new, when the new is totally finished, and the old when it's rehabbed, and the new with courtyard entrance details. Because again, the other elevation that was on Faulkner Street, it just has that little door where I enter into the porches and then I run up the stairs. But if it's truly a courtyard development, then I want to see how that courtyard plays out on the street, which architecturally and from the pedestrian side of things, I feel like is important if that's the case that we're making here. Which I appreciate that you've included on that as well. But
I'm kind of typing this. If it's truly a courtyard development, then there should be details.
or I would want to see the details of how the two structures are tied together amongst the courtyard, which I think would be a really nice way to integrate one development with old and new.
So I want to point out with that condition, the way it's written is prior to issuance of a certificate of appropriateness, applicant shall provide planning staff with, and it does not need to be it could be historic district
Yeah.
commission.
So it feels like, and this is just me throwing an idea out there, it feels like there's somewhat of a mix of where people sit. I know there's some clear against, there's some folks that are kind of middle of the water. And so something that I would like to propose for the commission to consider is potentially tabling this until we've had the opportunity to get some of the additional information that is mentioned, based off of what Tara just, although it's currently says the staff, but if we were wanting to see that additional detail within the commission, then I think it makes sense for us to make a decision with that supporting documentation. If there was going to need to be an additional review anyways, but
Yeah, well, and I also feel like with as much public input as we've gotten from all the neighbors, this also gives the developer and the owner a chance to consider all the information given and decide if they're going to double down on 3 stories or hear any of the conditions. I mean, I can't speak to the financial feasibility of if we lop off the top floor, is it a go, no go for the whole project and we could potentially have a Red Lobster next door, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it something that if we turn it down tonight, we might lose the opportunity to have a local developer who is relatively cognizant and is trying to work with the neighbors to provide something? By tabling it, I feel like we might have an opportunity to allow them the chance to hear public input and go back and consider any revisions or further the discussion a little bit more. So,
It would have to be a historic Red Lobster. Sorry.
The first.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
no, I would not think that.
Sorry, I couldn't stop.
yeah, that's fair.
I'm thinking about what you said.
So no, just an idea, because again, it doesn't feel like, usually it's pretty cut and dry on where it's going, and tonight it doesn't feel that that's the case.
And I do feel like item 7 was already with the staff recommendations was to go back and to address some architectural detailing and some entrances. And I would love to see the courtyard tying, or the elevation on Faulkner tying the two structures together, and how this would look as a complete development, not just we don't like the old, or we don't like the new one, but we like the old, we want the old to stay. So I feel like it needs to be considered as not just two separate structures, but as a whole as well.
Yeah.
Well, before we vote to table it, do we want to take like a straw vote and see where everyone is? Because if it's clear, there's a clear winner. If it's just like Marilyn and myself, then
Yeah.
there would not be any necessity to table it. If that makes
I
sense.
think the other thought around tabling it is allowing for, because it seemed, and I could be wrong, but I'm just trying to read the room the best I can. The opposition from you two was less on the project and its architectural appearance, but more so on the fact that it was 3 stories. And so I'm concerned that if we voted no, then that puts this project that has been drawn out to then be drawn out again. I'd rather us have the information that we need to make the best decision than just say no.
But we don't know that it'll be a no.
Okay.
Like,
So-
I guess that's my point. Only Marilyn, myself, and Liz and
Yeah.
you have spoken.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw this out real quick about kind of like the different ways to vote on this, is that the commission can vote to deny the project outright, and then the applicant can appeal, and they would appeal to it's the Circuit Court of Appeals. And then because you can't just deny, like just change the design, or they could appeal that change of design, right?
Yeah.
So it would be a denial of the project, or it can be a vote to, and then if you deny it, the applicant could come back with a new design for, a different historic design review case file. Or you could table it in order to, based upon some of these recommendations that you have, would like them to consider. So that then they can bring something, or at least, or table it to see more details. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give my 2 cents. So I do like they've hired a professional that kind of, this is their thing to do. I don't feel like it's a lot taller than others. If it was like sorority row where all your houses are similar, they need all be the same height, since the red brick beside this is a lot different than the existing. I don't think they have to be the same height. You could have a little difference in those. So I don't have a problem with the 3-story.
Okay. Other folks? Looking at the two less vocal.
I'm chewing on it still a little bit, if I'm being honest with you. Just because I'm trying to think about it from kind of all aspects, and I think both the application party and the neighbor speaking against all brought up really good points. And I guess in my mind here, I'm trying to think about, how do we stay the most middle of the road in this decision? How are we playing devil's advocate for both? And then how are we conforming to, am I making a decision that conforms to what I'm actually here for. Does that make sense?
And I feel the same way because I looked at the property also, and I can see the neighbor's point of view. I can see the constructor's point of view. So it's kind of like in a limb. So where I am on it.
I do have a concern about what will be built here if this project does not go forward. Even as logically, I don't think it's harmonious with the neighborhood. I mean, but I feel like with the zoning, which we did not do or have anything to do with, with the zoning, I feel like there's a box we're in now. And I do worry about what happens if the next developer comes through and what they want to put there. That is a concern of mine, but then the historic district commission part of me, which says I have to vote on these things, says it is definitely, to me, not harmonious with the rest of the neighborhood. So those two things that's why I said I was thankful for Liz's question. Because that is a consideration. The street could get a lot worse.
Live between a rock and a hard place, huh?
Well, and I don't know that I made this abundantly clear, but the other thought around tabling it was allowing for enough time for the applicant to come back before us once versus if we know that the item, was it item 7? If that's going to need to be reviewed by the commission anyways, I think just out of respect for them, then I don't know, it makes sense to have a single meeting potentially versus having multiple meetings, because as I've tried to do in previous meetings, the goal was to simplify the process as much as possible for the applicant, and be as straightforward, ask the questions that we need to know, and allow them the process to be as streamlined and as considerate of all the factors as possible, but not make it a burden to where people don't want to redevelop in downtown.
And I'm assuming if we did table it, there would be notice given to the neighbors in time for them to show up.
So the notice is this meeting. So you would be tabling it to the next meeting, which is May 28th. And the agenda goes out the Friday beforehand and is posted online. And so if there's any new visuals, it'll be in that.
And also knowing the process and being on the production of the visual side of things myself, there's like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks from today for the designer to make any changes or any.
So they don't need to necessarily make that application deadline because they're being notified that they're being,
Okay.
that they're going to be on the next
I was just
agenda.
making sure, because
That
like
meeting's
if,
actually
again,
on
if.
Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is on Wednesday, thank
Yeah.
you. So it's on Wednesday because of Memorial Day.
And if we're going the direction of tabling, I would like to ask the applicant if that 28th, our next meeting would give them sufficient time to collect the information that they would need, or if an additional or future meeting, not to have a wider gap for no reason, but just to allow for them to collect the information that they would need. So we're not just arbitrarily saying, oh, this date. Is that fair?
Yes, that's what I was gonna.
Okay.
That was the next question for Mr. Salter, and I can't see over the podium. If you.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So Brent, if you could come to the microphone, sorry, just for the folks that are in the audience, but then also the folks that are watching.
So Rob wanted to be here today, and he can definitely speak to the I'm not going to call them rules, but when it comes to architectural scaling and massing and proportions and heights and setbacks and relationships to streetscapes, I mean, there are guiding principles that are tried and true and have been for many, many, many years before any of us in this room were around, and he is an expert in that. So my conversation to him will be, can he give us some information or insight that proves out what he is saying is appropriate and scaled properly for the streetscape. So I would just need to speak with him and see what does his workload look like now. And I mean, he may say, absolutely, I can jump on it right away, or he may say, I'm in the middle of a project, I'm not going to be able to touch it for a month. I mean, I really have no idea until I speak with him. But I think today, if he were the one standing at this podium and able to articulate his reasoning that this massing and scaling is appropriate for the neighborhood, I think would have been helpful for everyone in here. So I can speak to him, but before I say, yes, the 28th of May will work, I don't know the answer to that.
I'm looking at our standards and our guidelines right now. So for tabling an item, and the limitation that I'm seeing is just that you can only table something twice, and then it has to be voted upon, but there isn't any specificity to date uncertain or date uncertain. So at this point, for tabling this item, it would probably be beneficial for the sake of if they can make it to the 28th, saying it's going to be at the next. And then if that is something that it is not, then it'll need to be, re-notification will need to go out. It can, because then it would be a withdrawal. So you would just need to inform planning staff 5 days prior to that meeting, the 28th, that you will not be able to make it. And then and if that's the case, then we will make a notice in the agenda that the item has been withdrawn and when it'll be heard again, and then if public noticing is required or not.
Okay.
Does that work?
So if we vote to table it now, we don't set the May 28th deadline, correct? Or do we? Is it only?
Yes, so it's tabled until May 28th. And then if the applicant is unable to have it, is not ready at that point in time, they need to inform planning staff 5 days prior to that meeting date, and then it'll be withdrawn from that.
But since there's not really specific rules in there, would we have the ability to table it until the June meeting if we chose to?
Let me double check.
Okay. And the reason why, because I would like for us to, as best we can, if we're going to table it to a specific meeting, especially given the fact that two reasons. One, the process that occurred for the rezoning, but then two, for the folks that are in this room to have more of an ability to know when that meeting's going to be.
It doesn't speak to that, but I do want to point out that in the event the case is withdrawn after the public hearing has been advertised, the same case shall not be resubmitted for at least 2 consecutive regularly scheduled commission meetings. So then you would have to wait if you weren't unable to make the June one. Or the May one, excuse me. So it may be beneficial to, an option would be to just at this meeting say that you're tabling it to the June meeting. I'll leave that up to,
Okay.
Obviously that's up to everyone else's.
So it's zoned currently C1. I'm going to change my vote. I'd just rather have a residential place there than a convenience store, a cafe, or a small office.
Apples down.
I just
So, but it is important to note though that anything that's developed there would be before this body.
So if we make a motion to table it, we all vote on the tabling of it. And if we decide to go ahead and vote now, then we have a.
I mean, I would
vote
just
to
say, I mean,
approve or deny?
Yes, yes. So there's two paths forward. One, tabling it, two, voting on it tonight, which then if it's yes, then the applicant is going to have to come before us as it relates to item 7 again anyways. If it's no, then they have the opportunity to appeal at which level of court?
Circuit Court.
Court. I mean, yeah, I think that there needs to be a motion of some sort, but I would just, given the fact that it's not clear, the chair would encourage you all to table it for us to collect the necessary information that we need to make an even more informed decision, and allow for the neighbors to have the opportunity to come to that set date as well. Yes.
I also think that too, because giving it to June, you give Mr. Brent time to see if he gets his designer to do what he has to do, and then gives the neighborhood time enough to know what's gonna happen also. I make a motion to table it.
Second.
So just to clarify, that was
Seconded.
to the June meeting, or was that to the May meeting?
The June meeting.
Okay. Is everyone good with, will someone second the amended?
He did.
Well,
I second the amended specificity of the June meeting.
okay, thank you. So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And I just want to point out, that's the June 23rd meeting.
And so, Tara, can you get with the applicant to go through the additional detail that has been called out for item 7? And then if we can also, if there's anything else that was brought up in the public comment that is appropriate for this body to consider as it relates to this application, if we can also request that as well. I gotta find my agenda because I think we're just. Any additional business for us to discuss tonight? Hearing none, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for us to adjourn.
So move.
Second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.